in the convention center. It was at the Heinz and at the Sheraton. The Heinz is a convention center that's kind of like in and around the Sheraton. So there was the Ceph, which is a storage system. Coop, we talked about that. OPNFV, huge, huge presence from telcos. And I'll tell you what, OpenStack is still alive, and it's because of these guys and telcos and networking, because they're bringing in the big bucks and they're bringing in the big contributions as well. So they have tons of new developers and openings right now for developers to work in telcos. So their entire infrastructure is moving from kind of physical networking to software-defined networking, and it's pretty much around this area. Open vSwitch, Open Switch, Open Contra, all of these are telco-related ancillary groups. Obviously Cloud Foundry, but who wants to talk about that?
Hey, you got to give them love. What's interesting about that is that Cloud Foundry is part of that Azure stack, which I was really blown away by.
Of course. Well, it's one of those that you have to pick. So you have Cloud Foundry, you have Kubernetes, and then you have to figure out, like, you can't do both. So you have to make a decision. And this is the strategy play that companies are doing. So definitely Cloud Foundry is one, and you know, it's great. It all works. At the end of the day, you have to just learn one and go with it. But it's very much into OpenStack as well. Ansible, obviously, we love it. Open Daylight, again, more telco stuff. I cannot tell you how much stuff will come on moving to a software-defined networking. It's just amazing. The stuff that's going to happen to our phones, our ability to be everywhere and anywhere, the quality is just it's mind-blowing. And I think the telcos themselves are noticing that with things like, I don't know who has we're doing a Google Hangouts, but if you've had a Google phone, and if you have like Google for long distance, and there's like Google Wi-Fi right now, it's making the telcos completely irrelevant. So they know this, and they have to bring in new technology to basically be up to par. And so these are all the ancillary or software days that were happening at the same time as the OpenStack Summit was happening. And I thought they were great. And like Donnie said, I had a presentation on the Ansible track, which was great and very well received. So Summit usually looks exactly like this. It's 3 days, and there's tons of sponsored activities and salons and stuff. And there's usually, you have to plan your day way ahead of time because there's no way you can attend all the meetings and all the presentations. But the good thing is that the OpenStack team hires an amazing audiovisual type group that comes and records everything. So all of the sessions were recorded, so you can really watch the entire OpenStack Summit again remotely. And I've actually come back and watched some presentations that I missed. So I can't stress enough how much things happen at the summit, because with any open source project, if you're working in open source, you're going to travel a lot, and you should travel to the summits because that's where things happen. So OpenStack has both the summit, and now they have the PTG, or the project team gathering. They used to be at the same summit, and they have since split. So this year was the first split. So at Barcelona, there was the OpenStack Summit, where everybody was talking business and customers, but there was an event kind of next door called the Product Team Gathering. And that's where all the developers were. And the complaint was that the developers couldn't go to the summit and see the sessions because they were doing the PTG sessions. They were planning and building the product. So what they said is, we're going to reduce it to a smaller cycle. So the last release was a 4-month release. And they had the first PTG was in Atlanta in February, I think. I'm going to mess up the date. And that was only the developers that build OpenStack. And then this one was the first summit that was only attendees. There were some developers, but not much. So we were expecting these attendee numbers to be way down, because usually you have the developers too. But many companies were like, okay, we're gonna pay you to fly to the PTG, but you're not gonna fly to Boston. I mean, the PTG was in Atlanta. You're not gonna fly to Boston on the same year, especially if you're outside of the US. So there were a lot of developers that did not make it, but still this number is ridiculous. But the most important thing is that the company's representative grew. So there were even more companies. So people were saying, well, everybody's pulling out of OpenStack. It's like, nah, not really. We have tons of new companies coming in. My experience from the booth, I was at the Red Hat booth in Barcelona for a little while, and at this one, and even at the Austin one. In the Austin one, which was the previous, there were folks asking like, well, what is infrastructure as a service? Like very like basic newcomers. That was the most popular question. And then in Barcelona, it was a little bit more, but it was, you know, outside of the US, so you never know. There were a lot of locals. And then in this one, they were like, okay, I want to, you know, tell me about Kubernetes. So you really could see folks that were already coming in. There's more folks adopting OpenStack. It's crazy. I can't tell you how much this has grown. A question there?
No, I was just celebrating in the background.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say they have other stats here that I didn't publish there, but 41%, oh, this was in Barcelona. And again, because it was in Europe, you can't really tell because there were a lot of, you know, Europe companies there. To the US one usually is more varied from around the world. But in Barcelona, at the main keynote speech, Mark Collier or Sparky Collier, who's the head of the OpenStack Foundation, was giving the keynote, and he asked like, okay, who here is this his first summit? And it was like 90% raised their hand. And we thought that, okay, now this is in the US, so for sure we're gonna get a lot less. So 41% in this summit, it was their first time. Like first time ever going to summit, first time ever coming in. So this is huge growth, especially because it's in the US, that there's still newcomers into the industry. That was fantastic. And the market is maturing because OpenStack is hard, we know. But they're figuring that to consume OpenStack, you have to be an active participant of this community, of the open source community. Also, the other interesting thing was that 17% of the attendees were architects. So usually we have the admins and the ops, and then we have the devs, and then there's like, you know, CEO, CIO, product managers, you know, business people. But there's usually a lot of ops and devs of an OpenStack that's already being deployed kind of thing. Having 17% architects means that there's folks planning to bring OpenStack into their environment, which is great, or to even see how they can grow their OpenStack deployment with these other ancillary or groups that are part of the ecosystem, like bringing in more Ceph, bringing in more Ansible. How can I bring in more Kubernetes into the mix or improve the OpenStack deployment? So it shows a lot of maturity too. And then, I mean, because I'm an engineer, obviously, like more numbers. So I gave you some of this. I gave you some of the region. This is completely expected. It doesn't mean that there's no attention from the other regions, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this is completely expected. This usually goes like that. If the summit is in the US, there's more attendees from North America. But I want you to know one thing here. Again, the cloud architect one stumped us, all of us. We were obviously expecting the upstream development, you know, users and admins. This is expected, but this was really, really impressive. We were really happy to see that. It's a great sign. Note this guy over here, countries with the most attendees. So I need to tell you something. OpenStack in China is huge. China region ranks #2 overall in the number of OpenStack users. That's not I'm not sharing that, but I'm reading it from this other internal doc that I have. It is also #2 in OpenStack developers upstream. So what does that mean? I mean, obviously there's Huawei, Huawei has a distribution of OpenStack, and that's great. There are competitors in the region, so for Red Hat to get into China is really hard. But also, I mean, China being the, I copy everything type approach, has very little distributions, meaning Huawei, but there's tons of other companies, huge companies, consuming it. So China Mobile, China Telecom, and these are companies that have their own distribution. So they may have some Huawei support in there, but for most of the part, they do development too. So we know of the developers that are coding upstream or they're in the part of the open source community, but they can have their own fork and contribute to it as well. So, I mean, we know OpenStack is big, but what I'm trying to say is that if we count China and how much forking there is of this open source code, it's even bigger. So there's China Mobile, China Telecom, 99 Cloud, Easy Stack, it's another distro, United Stack, Inspur, and others that you won't even remember. But don't discount China. They're number 2 in the number of users and developers.
By the way, Maria, just want to jump in. If you guys want to speak to one of the Chinese telcos that runs OpenStack to hear about some of the things that they've done with their OpenStack, I made a connection at last year's session who would love to come and speak to us. So if you guys would like to speak to some people who are doing some pretty hardcore things with OpenStack, I could set that up.
Yep. I would say though that while, like I said, for us it's been hard as Red Hat to come in with a distribution into China, the preferred base operating system for all our clouds is either CentOS or Fedora, which is obviously kind of RHEL based. It's by far like there's no Ubuntu in the horizon, which is kind of surprising because Ubuntu is pretty prevalent in the rest of the world. So, I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about Red Hat. So we were headline sponsors. I mean, this is what the booth area looked like the entire time. It was definitely very small, where the booth was and all that presence. We had tons of activities and had a Fenway Park event and all of that. So I can't stress it enough. It's a fun event and it's a fun thing to do. I want to highlight these 2 guys that won Paddy Power, Betfair, and UK Cloud. They won the Super User Award, and I don't know if you guys check out the Super User kind of either magazine or Super User OpenStack. Something that you really can see, they have tons of information on use cases, on case studies, and they recognize, and there's tons of stories of how folks are using OpenStack that you should check out. But these, Paddy Power, Betfair, and UK Cloud won the award, which is the coveted award of the night, and they both happen to be my customers. So, just saying. Obviously, I wanted to talk about Red Hat. So the thing about this one is that, yeah, there's companies kind of pulling out, like I said, from being a distribution provider or from some projects, which automatically pushed us up to the #1 position. We were 28% of the survey results. This is the OpenStack Foundation does the survey, not Red Hat. But it puts us in the 28% of the responders use a distribution of Red Hat, but also Dell EMC and Cisco, their distributions of Red Hat, of OpenStack are also Red Hat based. So it's Red Hat software on top of Dell or Cisco hardware. So if we add that up, we're like 54%. And I only mention this because when you were talking about deploying and upgrading OpenStack, which is the 2 projects that HP and Mirantis pulled out from. They had Fuel and, well, HP used to be contributor of OOO. But definitely if you want to start deploying OpenStack in a very complicated environment, I would say to start looking at OOO. And OOO is the deployer that Red Hat uses to deploy and upgrade OpenStack. The updates and upgrades process is 100% based on Ansible, because that's the part that I do. and we're moving into including more Kubernetes into the product. So for the next release, we're going to have all of the OpenStack services containerized and basically installed. But this is using still Docker. But then on the following release, which will be aligned to the Queen's release, sorry, to the Pike, no, Pike is the one that we're right now. The next one is Rocky. We will be then deploying those containers using Kubernetes, which is baked into OpenShift. So analysts really like that story and have basically said that it's pretty good. So we're doing tons of internal work on OpenStack and Kubernetes or OpenShift.
Quick question for you, Maria. Did I know at the last one? Well, the one I went to last year. So there's been two since the one I went to last year. They demo, like they usually have a vendor, one of the OpenStack distro vendors who'll demo. Did anyone demo their stuff this year? I remember like last year, Mirantis kind of blew everybody away with their Kubernetes demo. Did anyone demo this year?
There were demos. I was not part of all of the keynotes. All of that is recorded. So I remember in Austin, I remember it clearly because it was Boris from Mirantis,
Right.
and then he brought in the bear, right?
Yep.
This year, that position was for Jim Whitehurst, who's the CEO of Red Hat.
Okay.
And #1 CEO on tech, according to Inc. magazine. He's great, by the way. Like I personally can say that I've met him and he's fantastic. He was not gonna bring a bear and do that, but we did have pretty great demos, and we did some demos of deploying. I think it was Cinder, standalone Cinder, and standalone Neutron. So deploying OpenStack services standalone so they can be consumed by anybody.
Okay.
So that is pretty powerful and goes with the approach of containerizing all the things to be able to be delivered individually. So by doing that, then you can have later Kubernetes be able to deliver that.
Yeah, just to speak to that, to those people who may not have attended some of our earlier sessions, we had some engineers. We had two engineers come out from Rackspace. So we had Walter, and we had another guy named Denton. Denton wrote the networking book for OpenStack, and what they shared with us, which kind of blew the user group away, is that they use containers to deploy OpenStack services. So they use Ansible to do everything, and then they put a lot of the services to run OpenStack inside of containers. So it allows them to scale and upgrade everything super easily. And that's where the whole industry has really kind of gone. So it's kind of gone from approach to just running OpenStack and figuring out how to run these services to spinning up these services in containers. And running it that way to make it easier to scale, and then using something like a Kubernetes to make it resilient and fault tolerant and self-healing, as well as uber scalable. So yeah, I'm. Did you hear more about that Kubernetes story? Was there more like buzz around that whole Kubernetes story? Because I'm pretty sure it must have matured a little.
That was it. That was the whole it, and that's where our distribution is going to. By the way,
Okay.
So not only did I hear about it, that's where we're going. So we're not surprised at all. Cola is really the OpenStack tent.
Okay.
Project that's really doing this, utilizing the Cola. They build the containers. So here's the building the container images for everything. So this is their guide to how to build a container image. But if you look at things like this, it's like an Ansible deployment of OpenStack in Docker containers.
Okay.
And this was like 2015. This has moved. So more services are now containerized. More of those containers are kind of validated by the community. And so this is the production ready containers.
Yeah, we don't see your screen, by the way.
Oh, you don't?
We see you, but it's cool.
No, I was showing. Sorry, I was showing this.
Now we see the screen.
super user, like getting started with Cola and using Cola and Cola Ansible. And if you look at um, some of the work that's been done here is basically to containerize the OpenStack services, so containerizing Nova and Neutron and all of that, and then have that be deployed by Kubernetes. So Kubernetes will be the orchestrator to deploy and manage also the containers. So it doesn't really matter how you deploy OpenStack as long as it's up and you're running it. But the good thing is for operators then later to be able to use Kubernetes to operate and self-heal and just deal with that as a container. Like, oh, I'm having an issue with this. I'm like, never mind. I'm going to spin up another container. Move you to this one and off you go, and then just delete the other one. So updates and upgrades then become,
How does the Cola project different from the Magnum project? 'Cause there's another project that OpenStack had called Magnum. They have it called Magnum. So what's the difference between the two?
Yes. So, well, basically, I think Magnum is sort of like no longer a thing. So the thing with open source is that you can have multiple projects kind of working on multiple things or solving the same project, the same problem. And Cola basically reigns supreme. It's about, not just who has the better idea, but better adoption, how it links to everybody else and more communities. So Cola just kind of Cola one.
So it's like you can have two competing projects and they have to fight to the death because only one can remain, like a Highlander. Is that how it works?
That's exactly what happened with, I'm not kidding, that's exactly what happened with Fuel.
Wow.
Mirantis Fuel is the deployer upstream project, whereas Red Hat and at some point HP and others had Triple O. So you can deploy OpenStack using Triple O, which is OpenStack on top of OpenStack. That's why it's Triple O. You deploy OpenStack using a base OpenStack or Fuel, which was just different. It wasn't that it was any, one is better than the other. You could argue that Fuel was very good. It's just it couldn't scale the way that Triple O could. And then Mirantis basically say, okay, we can't have all these developers doing this when we're going to move to Kubernetes. Whereas I think Red Hat can basically say, hey, we can take our time because we already know Kubernetes, but we have a whole other team doing OpenShift on Kubernetes. So we can take our time to move from this into Kubernetes. So we can ease our way in. We don't have to tell developers stop doing this and do this other thing, because as a company, we already were investing in Kubernetes and have hundreds of developers doing that already. So it's just, survival of the fittest team. And we were lucky enough to be in the Kubernetes world early enough.
All right, cool.
And that's what things, I think, folks like. And by folks, I mean the analysts.
Okay.
That's it.
Maria, thank you so much for giving us a overview. Really appreciate taking time out of your life to share with us. That was super helpful. So thank you so much. Again, if you guys want to get more into it, all the sessions that were at OpenStack Summit are available online. And in fact, I believe if you go to the site, you can get a listing. I know I have the app on my phone for Summit, and it shows me all the topics or core sessions that were available. So you'll be able to find you'll be able to find all the major sessions on the YouTube channel for OpenStack. So just check that out. And check out Maria's session too. So with that part done, we're gonna just wrap it up. One of the things that I talked about in the beginning was the fact that the user group came together so that we could learn stuff. We know that there's a lot of different technologies that are constantly emerging and evolving. And really the purpose of the group is to encourage each other to constantly look at these new technologies, talk about what they're doing and where they're going, and then for the ones that seem like keepers, learn how to use them. So one of the things that was really important for the group is that you can't run a cloud and not have a DevOps tool. Like we learned that really quickly. The first installation we did for our community cloud was by hand, and I think we started it at like 10 o'clock. We got together at 8:30. We started, I think, at like 10 o'clock actually doing the installation, and we stood up that OpenStack environment, I think, by 10 p.m. that night. It was like 9 or 10. And then it still wasn't done. We needed some troubleshooting with networking that we didn't finish until months later when we had a OpenStack networking expert, James Denton, come in and look at our environment. And we learned that the way to actually deploy OpenStack is through a DevOps tool, and that no one deploys it by hand unless they are psychotic and masochistic, which we clearly are. Um, so hence I'll need to use a DevOps tool. We looked at a bunch of stuff. We decided upon Ansible. So the steps to go forward will be this. There is a 5-hour online course on Udemy. You can see it spelled there, udemy.com. And they have a course that's called Mastering Ansible. It's a 5-hour course. It's on sale. It was on sale the week before for $10. It's on sale this week for $15. Scoop up that class. It's a again, the speaker's not a very, I don't know what it is about technology, but the speaker is not an exciting dude. It's on a version of Ansible that's slightly older, so some of you'll have to tweak some of the labs because they don't work for the latest release of Ansible. But it's a fantastic class that introduces you to the fundamentals of Ansible. And what I'd like for us to do is that I'd like for everyone to purchase the, if you know Ansible already, you don't have to purchase anything. But if you purchase the course, we'll go through the course together. So we'll take some time every week. We'll select what modules that we're going to review. We'll start the week out with a series of modules that we review that we're going to go through, and we'll discuss them at the end of the week and do troubleshooting with people who apply those modules throughout the week or have questions about it. And we'll use our Slack channel for that. So what should happen is that I would say in about 2 weeks, by the end of this is June. So by the end of June, everybody in the user group who participates in this will understand how Ansible works. To complement us taking that class, there's a book by Jeff Gerling. Jeff Gerling turns out has written a bunch of the Ansible playbooks that are up on Ansible Galaxy, which is where people download Ansible playbooks from. He wrote this fantastic book that walks you and kind of explains you through a lot of the intricacies and nuances that 5-hour course cannot cover. So it's a great book. You can go in, you can look at things, pick it out. You'll be easily able to understand the code that you're looking at once you take the course. So it will just make sense. And then we have a bunch of Ansible experts who have committed to help us out. So Walter, it's not Benjamin, that's another friend of mine. But Walter, who is now works with Red Hat. Huh?
Walter Bentley.
Walter Bentley, yeah. Walter Bentley, who used to work for uh, who now works for Red Hat, has offered to kind of mentor the group on stuff that any questions that we have with Ansible, and then we have local subject matter experts like the Hostime team and Luke, who can walk us through it as well to help us master some of the finer points of it. So we should be, the goal of this is that in August we want to redeploy the OpenStack Community Cloud using Ansible and containers. So that's the goal for us to move forward the next time we do an OpenStack installation. So we're going to do it I won't call it the right way. We're going to do it the way that most organizations will do it this time around come August. So that's the big announcement there. We're going to start this initiative starting next week, Monday. So we'll start doing the assignments on Monday. And thanks, Elio Rackspace. So that's where Walter Bentley was originally from. So we'll start doing the sessions that we'll list the sessions that we'll list the parts of the Udemy presentation that we're going to cover on Monday, and then as the week progresses through, we'll probably meet Wednesday or Thursday to review, answer questions, and go over the content to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Can you move to the next slide, please? The big announcement that we had is that Spencer Crum, who works for IBM, I believe he works for Blue Metal, is what the name of the company, the division of IBM he works with that does OpenStack. He helped us to deploy our OpenStack, but he's also kind of like one of the mentors of the group and one of the people that guides the group. And he has a co-worker named Julia Kreger, who is actually down in Orlando today. She'll be here for the remainder of the week, and she's going to be presenting for IBM. But she's one of the major contributors to the OpenStack Ironic project. And the reason why the project is called Ironic is because it's bare metal building OpenStack. So OpenStack is a cloud, but this project is about how you not deploy a VM or deploy services that run on OpenStack. It's how you deploy the OpenStack itself on bare metal. So how you provision the servers bare metal and then deploy OpenStack on it. So it's a very, very cool project. They actually do a combination of Ironic and Ansible to do bare metal deployments of OpenStack, which is it's pretty badass. She's super smart. On our Slack channel, we posted one of her sessions where she kind of takes a deep dive into the process of using Ironic and Ansible to do bare metal builds for OpenStack. And she has volunteered either this week or sometime in the coming weeks to actually do an online session for her. We might even be able to get a physical meeting with her, but I'll let the team know how this will work, how it will play out. But she's definitely excited about presenting to the group and kind of giving us some of the insights of what Ironic and Ansible can do together to do bare metal deployments of OpenStack. So that's it. So I appreciate all you guys coming out to the session. We finished, it usually takes us an hour to go through these. We finished hour 15 minutes. Again, jump on Twitter, let people know that the group exists. So tweet us, talk about the group in social media. It helps all of us and kind of justifies all of us doing this when our bosses ask, what are we doing in our spare time where we're flinging around up the company names? Um, the other thing is that I would encourage everyone to do is to join the Slack channel. There's a lot of good information that we share and a lot of good conversations that we have in the Slack channel. And then I hope that whoever is on is going to help us take that next big step. I mean, I'm hoping that by this time next year, all of us in the core team really know how to do deployments of OpenStack, and we know a DevOps tool. So that's really the goal for us moving forward. So thanks, guys. Have a great night. I've recorded this. I'll make sure it's posted on our YouTube channel. I hope no one was picking their nose or anything like that was inappropriate because I'm not going to edit the video. It's too bad. And I want to thank Christian for, and yes, Ilya, we do have a YouTube channel. What? You guys don't know we have a YouTube channel? What? We have everything. We have everything. We have a YouTube channel. We have a Twitter handle. We have text messaging. Not that anyone has signed up for text message alerts. We have it all. We have an email. We have a whole email thing going on. We got all that. Holding out. Okay, I'm gonna let that go. Anyway, so this is gonna be recorded. We're gonna post it and make it available. And Maria, once again, thank you for taking time to share with us. We really appreciate it. Woo! Woo.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have a great night.
Thanks for hosting.
And
Yeah,
Michael,
see you guys next time.
send me an email so I can send you a license. And Luke, before you go, you had some guys from your crew who I also needed to give some software to, and they never followed up with me. People don't need software. I don't understand that. I think everyone needs development software today. Anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, why not?
All right. So, guys, talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.